Welcome to Future of Beauty Unfiltered episode 3. I am so genuinely excited today to have the amazing Millie Kendall MBE from the British Beauty Council join us today for what I'm hoping to be is a really exciting discussion around purpose, diversity, equity, inclusivity within the health and beauty industry. Millie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's
tea time. It's tea time. Let's have a chat. It's tea time.
I know it is tea time. Yeah, well, I'm like I said to you earlier, I've got my dime bar ready and waiting to be tucking in. But I feel like I really need to do a thorough introduction just to show the gravitas of the incredible things you've achieved in your career. So CEO of the British Beauty Council, retail maven and brand creator. You've obviously been instrumental in the success of many cult brands, including Shuimura, Aveda, Tweezerman, L'Occitane, and obviously Ruby and Millie. So having worked in the UK's leading retailers, you've been creating and marketing beauty brands for the past 30 years, being awarded an MBE in 2007 for your services to the cosmetic industry. Congratulations again, by the way. And then an OBE in 2022 for services to hair and beauty industry. What an incredible achievement. Obviously in 1990, you met Ruby Hammer and launched Ruby and Millie in 1998, which was at the time, the first mid-priced makeup brand to cut across existing price and brand perception barriers, which, you know, while that's, you know, a tactic nowadays that a lot of people kind of try to achieve, back then you were really pushing barriers, weren't you? And launching straight into Harvey Nicks. And then Selfridges, and simultaneously going on to retail successfully in Boots. So, you know, hopefully that's a really nice little nod to a concept that you came up with way back when as well.
That's one of my proudest and finest moments, I have to say.
Yeah, do you know what?
The marketing concept is still used today, that distribution network concept. Nobody else had ever launched in premium and mass at the same time.
So what was it that
a little bit after?
Yeah, what was it, I guess, that kind of actually got you thinking in that way in the first place?
Do you know what? I'd never shopped in Boots for makeup, and I'd only ever really worked in Harvey Nichols, but I really liked the idea of making a product available to the masses. I wanted everybody to have access to really cool cosmetics, because back then you could only get like brands like Shoe or MAC or whatever. They were only really available in sort of niche sort of retail in London.
And it was from there you just were like, yeah, let's go crazy. And has anyone actually come and spoke to you about it? Like I said, one of your proudest moments to be able to know that.
Do you know what? I do say it quite a lot, and I wonder whether it goes over people's heads. But the fact is that if you think about that brand, everybody always thinks about, oh, the packaging was so cool and the formulations were great and blah 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 blah. But actually, the really clever thing is that marketing concept is still what people do today. People will still go, I want to launch in Selfridges, and then I want to roll out to Superdrug. I want to launch in Liberty, and I want to roll out to Boots. What everybody wants is the volume and the accolade, or the accolade first and then the volume. And so they might do, I don't know, Liberty and then Cult Beauty or something. So it's different now because of the internet, but back then there was only brick and mortar. But to me, that's like the most successful part of that whole brand, because that's the legacy that stays. With everything that we do, or that I've done over the years, if a part of that brand stays as sort of like a industry legacy, that's success, isn't it? Really,
absolutely.
It's not about money or notoriety. It's about something that you've done, sticking, going, sort of maintaining through generations, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think especially when it's from an academic point of view as well, if you look at it like that, when people talk about their craft, you have covered off so many different areas within your career already. I mean, one of the things I find really fascinating that I'd like to talk about a bit more today as well is obviously you've collaborated with beauty journalists, Vogue beauty editor Anna Marie Solovey, launching concepts like Beauty Mart. So again, that really groundbreaking approach to beauty and retail was kind of born from I can't talk today, this is why I need the dime bar, realizing that retail methods actually haven't changed. And this is one of the conversations we have at Pull all the time. It is everything's changed, nothing's changed. When you talk about marketing, it's just finding ways to really slightly change it, but to really kind of disrupt that journey and embrace that, despite consumers shopping very differently, particularly with increasing globalization and advertising online, the fact that Beauty Mark became this disruptive kind of groundbreaking approach to retail beauty. You know, it's a really amazing.
It was a very easily copyable concept as well. It was very easy for a lot of other retailers to sort of copy the concept. Now what's really interesting is you get a lot of journalists that used to be at magazines, and with the demise of magazines, they've all gone into sort of more commercial lines of work, like Anna did with Beauty Mark. You know, it's sort of
just found that way forward.
Kate Chaplin, who's obviously one of, well, Anna and Kate were the founders of the British Beauty Council with me, but Kate Chaplin now has her own brand.
Off the back of the Beauty Mark kind of process.
Not so much, it was around the same time she was launching her own brand.
Oh, really?
Called Legology.
Oh, okay. I've not heard of Legology.
Yeah,
Tell
it's
me
really
more.
a great brand. So she was very well known as a journalist, but she was an expert on legs. We used to call her the legologist. So she developed a brand around it. She was a beauty director at the Telegraph, and then she went off and created her own brand.
About legs?
Literally about legs. So basically she's got she's got a product called Airlight, product called Sunlight, Lymph Light. She's got basically products for people that struggle with challenges with their legs, whether that be swelling or the skin texture, or she's got a product called Cellulite as well. But she's really focused on the leg area.
Do you know what? It's really amazing. I had a colleague of mine actually in another life. She had, I think she called it lipidemia. So Lymph Light for me is really familiar. And she was on an absolute mission to educate as many people as possible around kind of the aesthetic challenges that can come with legs sometimes. It's amazing if we really start wanting to critique something that much, we can evolve it massively. Yeah. Moving on actually then, just to, I mentioned earlier on, your passion for the beauty industry, it really is so inspiring. And obviously it's amazing to see your continued efforts recognised through your MBE and OBE, along with, as we've just touched on, kind of these accolades and things you're very proud of and how you've been able to influence the marketing community. What is it actually within you that drives that passion?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I think I've probably got a sort of a love of beauty, just a love of beautiful things. I don't know if you can see my office, but because although this is a podcast, we are on Zoom, but I just got this love for stuff. I like pretty things. Yeah. I like beautiful things. I like funny I just like things. And I like the medium of beauty. I think that I like the packaging. I like the product that goes in it. I like the style, the shape, the smell, the taste. I like the services. I mean, I have my hair cut so often. It's ridiculous. My hair never grows because I probably have it cut once every 2 weeks.
Because you're just changing it all the time.
I just change it all the time. I go to this week I'm doing side partings. So, I just have my nails done. I have my nails done all the time. I don't know what it is. It's like, it's like my one true love.
I think it's because
I just grew up in it. It's just something I know. It's like second nature to me. It's just not, it's not a job. It's not my work. It's something that I just love. And I like-minded people like Ruby Hammer, Anna Marie Solovey, Kate Chaplin, we all just love it. Given a new product arriving on your desk, you open that box and forget about unboxing and all that stuff on social media. It's like just what's in it. Sometimes I hate the boxes, they drive me nuts, but it's the product that's in it. And I would say a lot of my sort of industry friends, my mates, feel exactly the same way when they see a product that they love.
Do you know, it's really interesting because I when I first started working for Paul, obviously specializing in health and beauty, I never quite realized how obsessed I'd become, and also how expensive it would become for me to work in this category. You meet new people, and as even from a child, I was obsessed with skincare. I was constantly trying these new products. I think I had a better skincare routine than my mum. She used to kind of always joke about it, but I think you do, don't you? It's the smells, the texture, and for me, it's the science behind it as well. A lot of the time, people just assume it's surface level. And but actually the knowledge and the craft that goes into shaping these products, the communication of these products, the ingredients, the formulations, all of it is actually phenomenal.
I think there's a sort of pulling together of people as well. I think that I mean, I don't know about other industries, but I doubt the food industry is as much of a community as the beauty industry is. It is a community. It's like a village. It's like you're living in a community. You know, people that work in food or hygiene or clothing, or do they have that kind of sense of community the way we do? I don't know if they do. Maybe
fashion,
some bits of fashion they do, some bits they do, but the fashion industry isn't as visible on the high street in terms of its workforce. So you don't walk down your local high street in your village or town and come face to face with your fashion designer at the till at the local supermarket, but you could very likely to bump into your hairdresser or your nail technician. I actually went, it's so embarrassing, I went to the pub the other night, bumped into the lady who owns the gift shop, whose wedding it was at the pub, which was really interesting. And then who'd she invited? But the girl that does my waxing.
Oh,
so I'm standing at the bar at the pub with the girl that does my waxing. Like, if there's anything, I mean, there's nothing more intimate than that, is there?
No, absolutely.
So, you know, I'm not going to bump into the person that sewed my jeans together in the local pub. I'm just not. It's just not the way. It's a different kind of industry.
Yeah, I think one of the things as well is hairdressing, I think in particular, there's so much more than just hairdressers or even beauticians. I have shared some of the most intimate secrets or thoughts or challenges that are going on in my life with my hairdresser or my beautician way before I've spoke to anyone else within my inner circles, you know. And I think that's another thing. There is that sense of community, like you're saying. I think not only just with other people, but within yourselves, it allows you. And also I do think hair and nails and skin, it allows you to kind of express yourself personally, doesn't it? So, that's, I think, what makes it very intimate.
I think the thing is, it's just not, to me, it's just not a job. I grew up in it. My dad's a hairdresser. My mum was a darkroom technician. I grew up in this industry, don't really know anything else. So to me, it's like life. It's just a lifestyle.
Live and breathe it.
Yeah.
And so moving on then to, I guess, the British Beauty Council a little bit. So that was the first formal group to lobby legislative and policy issues at the government level for the beauty industry, which is just incredible. Where do you see the efforts of the organisations going in the next 5 years in that area? You know, what are you wanting to achieve there?
I mean, I think really, to be honest with you, what I want to achieve in 5 years is probably what we set out to achieve in the beginning. I didn't realise we were going to get so far down the road in 3 years, but and a lot of that's to do with COVID. It exacerbated a lot of different things, like the industry's moved to online and you know, closure of department stores and things like that. So I think that if you look at our original pillars, they were reputation, education, innovation, and obviously we didn't really know whether those pillars would work with those titles, but I had for a very, very long time written down a list of the challenges the industry had faced. Everything from its reputation in terms of DEI, in terms of its focus on men's grooming or lack of focus on men's grooming, celebrating the industry, the reputation of the sector, government relations, innovation, sustainability, education, which I still think is a mess, but anyway, it's a whole big story there. So I sort of wrote down everything that was I thought was a challenge, and obviously because I've worked in lots of different areas of the industry, I could see it from both a salon side, a freelancer side. So I had done hair and I've done makeup both in a salon, out in a studio. I have had my own makeup brand. I've had my own retail shop. I've worked with some of the bigger corporations. I've owned a PR agency since I was 23. I know what it's like to be a small employer of businesses. I know what it's like to have premises and have to pay rent and payroll and VAT and all that kind of stuff. So I had a pretty good idea of what the challenges were, but I also had a pretty good idea of what was so bloody brilliant about our industry. So we do get knocked a lot about our sort of diversity, equity and inclusivity. And yes, there are a lot of challenges that face our industry, but our industry is made up of 88% of our industry businesses are owned by women. It's pretty impressive. We're probably
In comparison to the tech world, for sure.
In comparison to tech, retail, hospitality, we're double retail, double hospitality. The only industry I think that trumps us in terms of having more women in it is the NHS. That's it. So that's sort of quite impressive. But then, there are challenges, and you're sort of looking for what is the truth around these topics. And so you kind of have to sort of peel the layers of the onion off. And so for the first sort of few years, it was like kind of, these are the things that I think are a challenge. There are parts of this that are really good. So for example, with DEI, there's a lot of women in our industry. Also, our industry is a really amazing place. If you don't feel like you fit in, for the LGBTQ community, it can be a very warm and inviting, environment. A lot of hairdressers that I met when I was an assistant at Tony and Guy were just sort of, I think we were just those kind of people that didn't feel like we fit in anywhere else. Could really express ourselves. It was a kind of place that was very welcoming. Having said that, on the backside of that, our industry is incredibly binary. You walk into a shop, you've got pink stuff that smells of roses and black packaging that smells of musk and sandalwood. Well, people that binary? I don't think they are. I sometimes would like to pop into the barber shop across the road because actually it looks really clean and looks quite inviting. If I just wanted my hair trimmed. So would I be welcome in that? I don't know. Would I feel odd? Maybe. I have a child who's non-binary, so I understand the fact that when they were younger, they didn't want to go to a ladies' hair salon and have their hair cut and coloured. They wanted to go and have, an undercut, short back and sides, basically. So it's like there are sort of every single challenge the industry faces, there are good and bad sides to it. And so what we've done over the past 4 years is kind of like done a deep dive into that. Like with the report we did, the Courage to Change on sustainability. Yep. Are we that awful? We're not that bad, actually. We've got a sense of circularity in our industry because we pick plants out the ground and we put them in our product, and then we use it. And so, but we also are an industry of consumable products. So there's a lot of packaging waste. So, how we make our products isn't that bad. But how wasteful we are is really quite bad. And also greenwashing is terrible. So there are elements of it that aren't so bad. And then there are elements, and also we've come together really well as an industry to try to tackle greenwashing and sustainability. So what I would like to see is basically everything that we started out with kind of fixed, really. So I would like to see, we now have different pillars. They're sort of similar, but they're sort of more refined now. So education has become talent. I would like to see a regulated industry, which is something that we're working on right now with the aesthetics piece. I would like to see us operating at the highest levels in terms of services, reputation. I don't want unlicensed people doing Botox in front living rooms. That's just not an option because it's damaging to our reputation as a sector. I'd like to see our industry being less binary. I would like to see our industry come together and solve the plastics problem because it's something that keeps me awake at night. The amount of plastic we've got that we use. And I would like to see growth and success and equality, and but equally I'd like to see a lot of profitability, really.
I think as well there's an element of kind of acknowledgement from the wider communities on actually the skill that's within that, and I think some of that is around education. So education
is the biggest beast. It's like the thing that's the hardest to get your head around, because education is so difficult in our industry. We don't have a lot of higher education courses, so therefore we're not seen as being very academic. We're over indexed in further education courses, but then the providers aren't always accredited or aren't always sort of I would say the word legit, but maybe that's not the right way of putting it, but they're certainly not.
They're not fulfilling it in the right way either. No,
they're not really delivering on the level that I feel that they should do. They're getting away with like short courses and giving people certificates, and so people are going out and doing treatments that they're really not qualified to do. So we're sort of under indexed in higher education, over indexed in further education, to the point where in further education in sort of 2018-19, 65,000 people did a level NVQ 2 and 3, but those people didn't enter into our industry. So we're sort of cramming them all into these further education courses because we think they're too stupid to do anything else, and then we're not able to give them jobs because we're not showing them that actually you can go and do a hairdressing degree and go and then do a course in chemistry and then become a formulator for shampoos and conditioners or whatever it might be. So because there's nothing wrong with a formulator having had some practical training in hairdressing in order for them to get to the point where they're a formulator. So that is something that we are working on right now. We've got a program that we're developing called Future Talent, because I don't think in the short term that we even if with the best will and intention, I don't think we're going to be able to completely resolve and overhaul the education system for our industry in this country. I mean, even down to beauty therapy, you've got 7 levels of coursework that you do. Level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. Oh, no, you don't, because there is no level 6. You just go straight to level 7. I mean, there isn't even a level 6. It's like, it's the stupidest system I've ever, heard of. So I don't know, the whole thing is like, it's astounding to me, really, that, but you can't wipe the slate clean and start again at this point. So
I think it's really interesting as well, difficult. Because I like to kind of think of it like a chessboard. All the pieces potentially there, they're just not looking in the right direction. So you could have a cracking game, but you're all playing a different one at the moment.
Exactly.
I think the regulation thing for me is something I'm really passionate about actually as well, particularly within the aesthetic space. So we've worked with a few companies. We've had the pleasure of meeting quite a lot of brands actually, a couple of hundred in the last few years, of all different shapes and sizes, and actually regulations and having those clear boundaries. Like you were saying, Kathy, who works in HSBC, could very easily go spend £100, learn how to put Botox in your face, and then start doing it in her downstairs toilet on a Tuesday afternoon. And I think the damage that potentially can do to kind of industry.
I mean, it's a matter of patient safety, first of all, right? That's obviously very important. The damage it does to our industry is appalling. And to be quite honest with you, it is a skill, and it requires to have a doctor on the premises. You have to have a doctor on the premises. If something goes wrong, who's prescribing it? I mean, obviously, there's a number of things. One is that these people shouldn't be able to get insurance. Number 2 is they shouldn't be able to get the product. And number 3, they shouldn't be able to do the courses. So there's a number of things that are a problem. But we're drafting the legislation, so it's going to be 2 years until we get it pushed through, but Victoria's doing that with the JCCP. Victoria's our chief of policy, so it's definitely happening. I mean, it was actually music to my ears, because I thought when we first started the British Beauty Council, that was under reputation. It was under our reputation pillar, and I just thought there is no chance we're ever going to get that pushed through with the government until maybe the second 3-year period, because we kind of like work in 3-year periods. So I was like, at the end of 6 years, we'll be able to push for regulation, because I felt confident that we'd be able to, get our industry in with government to a degree where they would start to look at that and go, oh, that's a problem. But 3 years down in, we managed to start it. So that's well ahead of schedule.
I think a lot of that potentially, do you think that maybe some of that's down to the acceleration we saw within home treatments because of COVID? Because of the way in which I think I've got my dog on the floor snoring away next to me right now. So
that's quite sweet.
He's going to start barking, no doubt, in a second. In the pandemic, particularly kind of just shy of post when they were bringing everything back very slowly, opening premises, treatments. We saw, when we were doing a little bit of research, we saw a rise in the willingness for home treatments, be that, doing your own home massage and everything else. And this was fully before salons were able to open. Do you think that's what actually saw a bit of an influx in, I'm going to call it the home Botox type?
You know what? It's a funny one, because it's very difficult. It's easy to say that it was that, because I would say a lot of politicians do probably have those treatments. So, and I think they, I was at an event at Number 10 recently, and a very well-known politician, first thing she wanted to talk to me about was Botox. And so there is a lot of, knowledge of it. And actually she said, oh, I'm really delighted that this is all happening, because it shouldn't be something that you should be ashamed of getting in the back room of blah, 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 you know. So they all seem to be, I don't know. That's a really good point. I hadn't really thought of it. I think a lot of, there was a lot of visibility on our industry because something was taken away that we couldn't have.
Yeah.
You could order food, you could order clothes, you could order pretty much everything. But what you couldn't do is order a massage, because you couldn't come into close contact with somebody. You couldn't get a haircut. You couldn't get your nails done. And your physical, you know, how you manifest physically, your physicality, how you look when you're on Zoom all day long. It's pretty stressful. I mean, I had like grey hair. Half my head was grey. Now I think I quite liked it. But, you know, at the time I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to get my hair coloured. You know, it's sort of, we were grinning and bearing it, weren't we? We were sort of, where are the Zoom filters?
Oh my goodness, I change
I'm
lip
so
colour
anti
every
filters,
day.
and I still bloody use them, because the thing is that it's important, and you're having to nowadays on Zoom, on the phone, you have to look at yourself all day long.
Yeah, I think that's it. You're more aware of, they're not flaws, but all of the things you love and sometimes don't love about yourself for whatever reason. And I think that's the challenge, is you're forced to basically constantly look in a mirror, you know. And I think
year's a long time if you're used to having Botox and fillers to not be able to have anything.
Or even just get your hair done. But again, it was like I was saying, it's kind of be able to speak to someone and have that kind of offload. It's that self-care. It's, you know, I've spoken about this a lot with lots of people at part of the British Beauty Council, but actually the mental health impacts that the industry brings,
that's
in
another
a positive way.
Like, that's another sort of one of those long-term goals, that part of our talent pillar is to ensure that the mental health of the nation is supported by the services that we offer. So where the NHS maybe is overly stretched, where it's sort of overly stretched, I felt like they could have reached out more to our industry for sort of things like touch therapy and certain services. I mean, when you go to let's say, for example, Marie Curie Clinic, right? So they're there, it's a hospice, they're treating people that are at sort of end of life with cancer, essentially. And when you're in the lobby or the waiting area, there are brochures for massage, acupuncture, Reiki healing. All of that is there in that environment where people need pain relief, they need positivity, they need their mental well. Why is it only there at end of life? Why are those treatments not available on the NHS before you get to that point? So that, you know, do you know what I mean? And it's like,
oh my gosh, 100%.
I feel like it's really overlooked, but obviously that's a whole different department that we're dealing with at government level. And we would have to get NICE to recognise, NICE is a part of the NHS, to recognise that those services were of benefit, which there must be some reason, and this is where we start to have to peel back the layers of the onion. There must be some reason why those treatments are allowed at hospice and not at a hospital.
Well, I think as well, it's so I've got this palliative care at this point. Is so my sister, thankfully, she's in remission now, but my sister last year was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of leukemia. Lauren by Sarah London, actually, who you guys introduced us to, was incredibly helpful in that process. But when she was beginning that chemotherapy, she very much, because of the type of leukemia, she was in hospital. That was it. That's where you stayed. And actually once a week they had a group of, this was at Frimley Park Hospital in Surrey, a group of therapists go around and actually with essential oils. I think we spoke about this actually at British Beauty Week last year. We had someone from LMS, Sarah, I can't quite remember her full name, unfortunately. But we were talking about, again, how the spa industry is potentially a little bit behind as far as being recognized for the amazing things they can do when it comes to working with essential oils and the treatments and the way in which your body responds to those scents based on what they need.
We've got a really good report actually on our website around mental health and touch therapy that Helena, who's our COO, who was the general manager of the UK Spa Association previously, she wrote that. And it's pretty impressive. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, that you're very lucky, because that would have obviously been either put on by the hospital or somebody would have organized that internally, but that is not standard practice. And the problem
it's not.
is that it's sort of few and far between, and it really needs to be much more
formalized,
open, and a much more formal. And we really need the government to understand, or NHS to understand, that, you know, this beauty treatment's not the enemy. They're not the poor relation. Actually, they can work very well in synergy with traditional treatments.
Yeah, and you know what, we did acknowledge at the time actually how fortunate she was to witness that. But I think the impact that it made, the impact it had for her, it really opened up for me and a lot of the team when we were kind of looking into these options in the industry of how powerful it can really be. You mentioned earlier when we were talking, I can hear in your voice, I can see when you're talking, you're really passionate about gender equality, inclusivity, and obviously policy and advocacy, which we've already spoke about. In one of our most recent pieces of research that we did, our Future of Beauty research this year, we found that 71% of women want health and beauty brands to support body positivity, but 64% of men don't personally feel well represented in the industry. I know you touched on this earlier around kind of men, and for me, I refer to men in a little bit as the forgotten category. Sometimes the forgotten consumer.
Well, I mean, there's a sort of, we talk a lot about, you know, don't use the word anti-aging, women's bodies, blah, blah, blah. I mean, okay, there's a bit of a derogatory dad bod kind of comment that goes around sometimes, but the fact is that I still find that the one thing that we overlook as women maybe is the impact on men when they lose their hair. I'm like seriously obsessed by this concept of, imagine waking up in the morning and you've got no hair. We're very supportive of women, and women can wear wigs and, you know, scarves and cover-ups, and a lot of times when women lose their hair, it's due to cancer treatments and things like that. But given the massive proportion of men that lose their hair, like, I think one of the biggest revolutions, and really one of the biggest sort of most positive things for men, is hair transplants over the past sort of 10, 15 years, because they've become not commonplace, but much more accessible. And I think we sort of overlook, like, what losing your hair might do to your mental well-being at that point, or how you see yourself. Or, you know, everyone talks about the fact that William hasn't shaved his head. Why hasn't he shaved, you know, it's sort of, I don't know, it's just one of those sort of things that I sort of question, I think about sometimes. I think, you know, men and aging, and
do you think,
and I don't
in general,
think though, I think also men aren't just like butch sort of musk wearers either.
Do you know what, it's really interesting. So I was having a chat with Joseph Harwood, obviously, who again is a part of the committee for DEI, what they didn't go into detail, but they're working with a famous perfume nose. And one of the comments that was made was that up into the 50s, perfume was actually unisex. And it was marketing that kind of created this male, female, musky, florally, kind of sweet, sour.
It's like, I know, I mean, I've worked with journalists all my life, and a lot of them are copywriters on products, and a brand will have a very similar formulation, maybe slightly different in terms of fragrance, but even the copywriting is different. So the writing on the front and the back of the pack is designed to be attracted to women or men, but the product's really no different at all.
Absolute Collagen does the exact same thing. They talk about collagen, plumpness, beauty, but they target men. They talk about proteins, completely different language, exactly the same product in
language
theory.
Is different,
Do you think that the health and beauty industry is actually showing some gender inequality by potentially only applying body positivity principles to women in adverts rather than men? You mentioned that kind of dad bod joke, and we've definitely seen a lot of that. But there's definitely, for me, when I look around, that there is still, we're a little bit behind still a little bit when it comes to men, I think.
Yeah, but I think again that it's down to that sort of slightly binary kind of weirdness. Yeah, I do think so. I think there's a massive amount of challenges still facing our industry across equality. And yes, I do think that. I think that we are. I mean, if there's one thing the Kardashians did do well, and I don't really often say that there's a lot that I'm a fan of, but you know, the sort of more shapely body.
Yes.
All of a sudden became a bit more accessible.
Big bums are good now.
Big bums. I mean, I spent my entire childhood trying to hide my big bum. Now
I've embraced it.
Now my trainer makes me do glutes, which just makes it bigger and bigger.
Yeah, that's it. It's all about squats.
I'm even okay with it. So I think there's sort of, in that regard, I think there's sort of there's been some positivity, but I'm not so sure that has extended to men. I think that I mean, when we first started with the British Beauty Council, we held a town hall meeting right at the beginning, back in like early 2019 or end of 2018. And we had 2 panel talks on diversity and equity inclusion. And then we had these breakout rooms, and I hosted one of the rooms, and my job was to basically listen to, I think there was about 20 odd people around a table, and I was to take notes. And then we were going to sort of take what was written on these whiteboards and kind of sort of almost do like a word cloud, you know, and kind of look at what were the real challenges facing our industry. And there were people like Kay Montano's, a makeup artist, mixed race makeup artist, and there was Ate Jewel, and quite a lot of well-known people were there. And there were a lot of loud voices in the room as well. And then all of a sudden, there was this guy put his hand up, and he was a South Asian guy. And he said, I appreciate all the talk about women of color, but none of you are speaking to me, and I've got money to spend on product. And I was like, oh my God, you've just nailed it. Like, yeah, we can we can be very loud and very overbearing, and then we just forget somebody, and all of a sudden someone's left behind. You know, it's easily done. It's not right. We have to consciously look at how we are marketing our product to be more inclusive and more, you know, do we want, okay, there are some products that maybe the formulations are slightly different for different hair textures or different skin colors. You know, you're not going to put a sort of very sun protection on that's very white and full of mineral, you know, zinc and stuff like that on a dark skin. So sometimes formulations are suited to certain types of people. But essentially, the sort of basic makeup of a beauty product shouldn't come with an identity. You should be able to personalize it, and it should become about you, not about who that product is marketed to. Surely that's the whole goal of personalization, is that a generic product, any product, can be personalized to the person that's buying it. I don't want to be told by a marketing department that product is very Millie. I remember when I had a makeup brand, Ruby Millie, and I went to the formulators, and they went, this is very Ruby and Millie, or this is not very Ruby and Millie. And I was like, don't you dare tell me what is not Ruby and Millie.
Yeah.
Like, but you know, I think that's the sort of frustrating part of the industry, is that we've not got to the confidence level as an industry to say, do you know what, buy this product, you make what you want of it, you add your own DNA to it, you let that product become you, not let that product define you.
But do you think that's because sometimes we have a habit of trying to be everything to everyone, and actually there's something really powerful about saying, I've developed this, skincare in particular, right? There are so many different types of skin and challenges that come with skin. Someone that's got very dry skin is going to need something different from someone that has oily combination acne-based skin.
Yeah.
Rather than saying, you know, you're Hannah, you're in your 30s, you've got dry skin, you need this product. It's kind of going, we know how to make products for people that have these problems. And that's as far as it goes.
But the problem is that they're not always able to identify whether they've got that problem or not.
But that's where education obviously needs to play a huge part.
But that's what's really challenging. So let's say I have a daughter who's now 15. When she was about 13, she was getting some hormonal spots. To her, it was acne. She wanted me to bring home anything that was going to half burn her face off.
Yeah.
I saw on TikTok, this product, you have to bring it home. I was like, that's far too strong for you. You cannot use that on your face. You know, unless you wear about 3 inches of sunscreen every single day for the rest of your life, you'll never be able to sit in the sunshine. You know, it's like the challenge with that is you're presuming that every single consumer has the level of education that somebody in the industry has. I go in and I'll say, I've got very dry skin. And then the therapist will go, no, it's not. It's actually very dehydrated. Or I'll say, my skin feels very XYZ. And they'll go, no, it's just that we're not, as a consumer, and I'm saying I'm a consumer, I'm not as well educated as the therapist. So what I determine I need is probably
different to what you actually need.
Not always what I really need.
And so, how do you think brands can look at combating this? Because obviously, you know,
well, diagnostics, I think, is the way forward. I mean, Hirons just launched a platform, didn't you, Karen and Hirons? I think diagnostics is the way forward. And I think that it's going to have to move a lot faster technologically to actually do the right thing and be as good as it could be. But then, you know, what I would love is like to be able to wake up in the morning, diagnose my skin. I'd like my 3D printer to print out just a bit of the product that I need.
Yeah.
That's
in the perfect proportion as well. Because we overuse
perfect
products.
Amount, no more. Like really simple. Just give me that. I'm super happy.
There are those companies and tools out there, actually. There's a few that we've come across in that time that they are trying to push into those areas with that technology. I think this is where
feel like
some
I
of
really like it. I really like it.
And I
don't care about all the packaging and bits and bobs. I mean,
no,
I do like it. I like pretty things, you know, but I don't have it because I use it. I have it because I just collect it. But then I'd like, my beauty collection is not something I put on my face. It's like a museum. You know,
well,
it's not, for me, it's slightly different. I'm collecting things like I would collect art or, you know, or
Amazing. Well, so do you think then that you say about diagnostics, you know, when it comes to education for a brand to a consumer, what do you think brands can do to kind of actually be better at bridging that gap between what the consumer thinks they need versus what the professional, because like you've already touched on, a hairdresser will know so much more. They know actually the fundamental structure of the hair and how to potentially not reverse some things that are irreversible, right? But how to actually improve whatever it is they're looking for.
Well, I think the fusion of services and consumer, you know, spending in consumers and retail, I think the fusion is coming ever close together. I mean, even Holland and Barrett have got a Blow Limited in their shops now, you know. So I think there's that sort of how that fusion has been for a very long time. Put a salon into a shop, do an altar, you know, do that kind of thing. I'm not so sure that's always the way it should be. I think there are other ways of doing that. So Cult Beauty, when it first started, I was one of the experts on Cult Beauty, where I would recommend certain products. So you kind of almost created people would curate their favorite products and explain why they use them and what their skin was like, so that you could go, oh yeah, my hair is that color, I should use that product, or my skin is like that, I should use that product. So that kind of curation piece is great. That's also something that obviously you see a lot on social media. So you'll people like Karen Hirons or Deja. These are professional women who have trained as estheticians, so they're very well, you know, adept at saying, at giving good advice. So you've got sort of that advice being very readily available all across social media. That advice being very, in some sense, available on e-commerce platforms, and then obviously retailers are trying to bring that in to their sort of retail environments, keeping it still quite separated. What I would like to see is that to be integrated more into the sort of sales banter. You know, you get it with the makeup artist. So you go to MAC and you go to Charlotte Tilbury and there's a makeup artist who's trained to do your makeup. I'm not so sure the girls that are selling the skincare are always estheticians or trained beauty therapists. Maybe some of them are, but I would like to see that maybe more obvious. Actually, when we had like Clarins and they were. I don't know if that's so obvious anymore.
I think Clarins in particular as well, that is a huge part of their brand identity. You know, it's the white lab coats, you know, the very kind of clinical approach. I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder just if that sort of, I don't know, I see that fusion is something that we can really strive for.
I feel like we pushed towards it a little bit in lockdown in a really weird way, because the actual physical bricks and mortar element was closed. You could have a FaceTime with someone in store, so you ended up going back a little bit to these personalized one-on-one consultations where they're then walking you through the products available based on the challenges you were explaining. So some of that knowledge that you're talking about, I think, was very much there. It was interesting. You touched earlier on kind of influence and social media, and obviously you have a real range of types of people. When you talk about influencers, you've kind of got the qualified professionals that have trained in these areas, and then you just have influencers from a following perspective, but they might potentially be talking about the same product. Do you think that sometimes can do more harm than good when you have those unqualified influencers kind of?
Well, we've just started a program. We're in pilot scheme at the moment where we are educating those influencers that come from fashion and lifestyle and travel and whatever. So we've got a pilot program. We've got about 10 or 12 of them on so far. We've created an 8-module course on skin health and skin physiology so that they can learn. It's like it's called Learning with Experts. So it's a platform that existed that we used, and we just sort of white labeled it, but basically we did the training. They sort of form the package and the platform. And so they sort of help us to sort of prepare the modules, and there's like homework and assignments, and you have to sort of deliver. So it's like going to school.
And what was the driving force behind kind of looking at getting that pilot up and running?
The Gwyneth Paltrow piece with the sunscreen, you know, on the cheekbones. I mean, I love Gwyneth, but God knows that's stupid. You know, that's just ridiculous, isn't it? And it was like, and
he's gone too far.
It sort of came to me that, like, you know, people aren't wrong. That is really dangerous. You know, people with that kind of influence need to be responsible about what they're saying, because it's incredibly dangerous. And again, you know, if my job is to sort of protect the reputation of the industry, we'd worked really hard to get to that point where we were sort of being invited to meetings at number 10 and 11, and we were sort of sat around the table. I wasn't going to screw that up because somebody in America decided to put some cream on their cheekbones and make us look like a bunch of idiots. You know, there was no way. So I just thought, well, what can we do? And then I was talking to a colleague of mine who's one of our patrons, and he was saying, you know, well, maybe we could educate people. I'm like, how are you going to do that in such a massive degree? It's like, it's almost impossible to do. But then our education pillar president said, weirdly, I've been talking to this organization called Learning with Experts. They are willing to do this project with us. So it's in pilots at the moment. We'll see what happens with it.
Oh, wow. Good luck. I'd love to hear how that one evolves.
I mean, it just means people can sign up. I think we can have like 100 people on each course at a time, which I think is quite good.
I think as well, it kind of actually validates that influencer even further to say they have taken the time to find out what they're, you know, so they know the words that are coming out their mouth. They do know what they're talking about, and therefore they can have that. It is that duty of care. It's like obviously how, you know, 18 months ago or however long it was, you know, it kind of came into play that you had to declare you couldn't use filters when you were talking about skincare products on social media. So these small little shifts, they are having a positive impact, I think, in the right way.
Yeah, I think so. I think, and also the thing is I think if people know that we're onto them,
exactly. Millie's watching you, always watching.
You. And you know, I always say, because like somebody, you know, people always talk about sort of social media and stuff, and I always think like, you know, the British Beauty Council, we're not influencers, but we are relatively influential. I think there's a difference between you know, the different types of influence. I mean, I'm not, you know, I would never want to be influencer because it's a difficult job. But we are, I'm very keen on the digital content creation community because it's a source of revenue, obviously, that is included in like the, you know, beauty industry's P&L for, you know, brand Great Britain. And it's very important. And also, I think we should be legitimizing it as a proper route in a career. And I think that, you know, it's a long time. A lot of people from one side of the industry have been pointing fingers at people on the other side of the industry. And actually, that's wrong. It's just wrong because I think that there's a way of incorporating both sides.
And I think that's that, like you're saying, I think there's an element of balance that it's never going to be a fixed picture with this. That's the whole beauty of this category, is there is that creativity. Everyone can kind of be independent, be who they ever feel, look, sound, whatever it may be. And I think this was one of the things that sparked off a lot of our internal conversations on the latest piece. Again, that dime bar is waiting for me because I can't talk now. Latest piece of research, which was, can beauty be both, and both's really important here, aspirational and inclusive? Because it split a room, that question alone, when we were talking about it, because you had me going, no, I you know, I walk past ads in Marks and Spencer's in the underwear department and see kind of amazing big round peaches with stretch marks, and I'm going, yes, this is what I want to see, this resonates with me. And then I had, you know, someone very similar age to me go, I don't want to see that, I want to see something I can aspire to be. And I'm like, why can't it be both? Why does it have to be one or the other? And I feel like sometimes we're kind of picking a side, and actually that's where we're trying to find out what the consumer wants. And I think there is definitely a blend of the two. You know, we can sit here right now and say, you know, we want to be who we are, we want to be ourselves, we want to be independent, and we want to own it. But at the same time, we've just sat there and said,
well, I think there's a difference between what picture makes you feel better and what picture makes you buy product.
Well, that's a good point.
You know, I mean, you know, and also it's sort of, I mean, the way I was looking at it with the sort of education side, and one of the things I'm quite keen to do, which is sort of, again, part of probably the next 3-year plan, is to look at makeup artistry, and look at digital makeup creators, people that put makeup on their face, who are oftentimes earning a lot of money and have become very famous very quickly for putting makeup on their faces, compared to people that I've known that have been makeup artists for decades and decades and decades and work in editorial, who probably don't get the kind of day rate that a lot of these people get to post a, you know, square image on Instagram. And the people, my friends that are makeup artists, that are either doing like sort of press junkets or editorial or whatever it is, aren't the ones that are getting booked, let's say, to do a show, because the show, that fashion designer wants the influencer makeup artist to be backstage because it gives them a boost of credibility or whatever. And the fact is that how do those two worlds live together? How do my makeup artist friends accept the digital creator that paints their face? This is if they don't have a brand and they don't have something to sell. And then how do you legitimize what that content creator is doing without it crossing over and taking work away from the makeup artist that's been assisting and worked their way up over the past 28 years? Do you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, it's
like the two worlds do need to live together, without the sort of the makeup artist is doing the show and the shoot and whatever, feeling like they have to create the content online, because I think there's a real pressure for them to become these influencers online, content creators or whatever. It's sort of just, I think everything about the industry that's a challenge is sort of like it's like a puzzle. And I think about it a lot, probably way too much, until I probably fall asleep at night. And I think, now, if only we could just do that might work out better for everyone, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of yin and yang, I always think of it.
There is.
Kind of look, there's a lot of contradictions, and one cannot live without the other. But it's actually that the balance sometimes is off, dependent on...
It's like that whole hair salon thing. Yeah. It's the most welcoming environment to work in. You can be any part of that LGBTQIA community and feel like you just belong in a hair salon. But my God, you know what? If you're going in for a haircut, you've either got to go to the barbershop or the ladies' hairdressing salon. It's so binary from the outside, but so non-binary from the inside. It's the weirdest thing.
Isn't it funny how the experiences in the two are so different?
Yeah.
But you're going in essentially for the same thing, which is to have your hair cut.
I've got a really good book I bought, and I want to say it's about sort of it's on my bookshelf somewhere and I can't see it. It's about the
community. For everyone listening, Millie's lovingly looking at her wall right now.
I'm looking at my wall right now. I'm looking at my book. I think it's called You Next. That's it, You Next. And it's basically a book of like sort of the images of barbershops.
Okay.
And the community of barbershops. Hold on, I'm just going to see if I can find it. I think it's this one. Yeah. Reflection in Black barbershops. And just the images are just so like, you know, of like people just sitting in.
Yeah.
It's just such a, you know, in some parts of the world, you know, barbershops are really amazing communities, you know.
Generations and generations of people going to that same barber. You know, I cut your granddad's hair, your hair, your dad's hair. Yeah, it is really interesting, and I do think it's going to take part of me questions if it will always be in that, you know, while I said to you everything's changed, nothing's changed from a marketing perspective. You know, we've done a lot of stuff. How we communicate it's going to change. You know, as human beings, Andrew Tenzer, who came to our event and was one of the panelists, said something very similar, which was, you know, don't confuse kind of generations with cohorts of people and the different stages they're in life. And, you know, younger people have more of a zest for life and want to take on the world, and the olders, and obviously he's categorizing in masses, are a bit more kind of jaded, and therefore their approach to communication and experiences and expendable income and all these different things impact how we talk to those individuals. Okay, so I genuinely could talk to you about this all day, but you're a very busy woman. So I have one more question for you. Okay. It's a really simple one, which is, if you could give one piece of advice to marketers, brand managers, anyone that's listening today, based on what we've spoke about within the category, what would that piece of advice be?
Oh God, that's such a difficult one. I mean, I was just thinking about what you were saying, and I was thinking, do I feel as a 55-year-old, you know, essentially middle-aged woman, do I feel like I don't have a zest for life anymore? Do I feel like that energetic part of myself, the sort of experimental bit of myself is gone, and I don't feel like that at all? It's probably why I do what I do. I would say never judge a book by its cover. Basically, it's as simple as that, you know.
And if there was a change,
don't overly define people. Let people seek you. I just think we overly define everything. Like, we've got to have a flipping name for everything. Like, I remember having a makeup brand in a major store, and they were like, your brand needs to target eager experimentalists. I'm like, why? Like, who is that? You know, they even had a bloody name for it, Rebecca or Belinda or something. And I think that we overly define everything. Why do we do that? Because it makes us feel confident that we know what we're doing. It's just, you can know what you're doing without having to overly define everything. It's just go with your gut. It's like, you know, 9 times out of 10, you know what's right. I know that, you know, as marketers, you often have to sort of prove to clients and what have you that they're going to get something for their money. But I think the days of overly defining the consumer are just long gone. I just think it's just that, to me, is really old fashioned. It's not moving on at all.
That's a statement there and then. I'm going to capture that one. The days of overly defining the consumer are long gone.
Yeah, they just are. It's just rubbish. It's absolutely rubbish. I wear the same mascara my 15-year-old daughter wears. Who cares?
Yeah, I think things are more fluid than they ever have been. And I think by staying open-minded in that conversation, and again, holding on to why you're here and how you're trying to help someone, rather than presuming
being open-minded is the key. Being open-minded is the key. I think there's sort of like, nothing irritates me more than narrow-minded people. I find it so frustrating. And I think it's so damaging to success to be narrow-minded.
Yeah, it's very stifling to creativity, isn't it? Anyway, thank you
so much. Thank you. Really. I know we ran over a little bit, but oh well.
No, this is an absolute pleasure. You've done so much. I could talk to you for honestly hours. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks for having me, Hannah. Really lovely to chat to you. Take care. See you soon.